Paul Leak, you're up next.
All right. First, thank you so much for the opportunity to present today. Thank you to the Center for Advancing Innovation, Walmart, and all those in attendance. I'm Paul Leak, CEO and founder of VerteCore Technologies. But 15 years ago, I was a specialist in the U.S. Army when I had a training accident. The doctors essentially gave me two choices: an invasive spinal surgery, a multi-level fusion that may or may not work, or live with pain, masking the symptoms with opioids and steroids the rest of my life. So I chose option C and spent the next decade looking for any solution and trying almost anything to find a cure for my back pain, including these three products. They ended up having two things in common. Number one, as you would imagine, they simply didn't work for me. There was very little efficacy. And number two, as it turns out, they enjoyed very, very robust consumer sales, accounting for 1.6 billion between the three. Nothing worked, that is, until a friend introduced me to decompression therapy. Traction applied on a computer-controlled and very expensive hydraulic table at a physician's office. It worked great for me. The problem was that neither the VA nor my private insurance would cover the expense, and it was super inconvenient, requiring a 3-hour round trip and multiple visits to the doctor's office every week. So we did the best thing and invented our own solution. The VerteCore lift safely and conveniently decompresses your intervertebral disc from L5 to T5, offering the relief that literally millions worldwide are seeking. And when we were undergoing some of our early analysis, the doctors at Texas Back Institute identified a third area in which we helped the patient: the SI joint. SI joint or sacroiliac dysfunction is responsible for 35% of back pain. And they said that the VerteCore lift was the only product they'd ever tried that facilitated SI joint distraction, alleviating that pain. By the numbers, back pain is an epidemic. It affects 100 million Americans and 1.7 billion people worldwide. It's the leading cause of lost worker productivity worldwide. And according to the U.S. Department of Labor, it costs companies an average of $34,600 per 100 employees. For companies the stature of Walmart, J.B. Hunt, Koch Industries, that's a staggering sum that has both direct and indirect cost. Not to mention, there are 1.4 million Americans that undergo spine surgeries every year. And unfortunately, they end up becoming a part of a statistic, and that is that 74% of all back surgeries ultimately fail. The market that we're entering has $3.6 billion in global orthopedic and support sales, an additional $1.3 billion in over-the-counter brace sales. But perhaps more telling is the $50 billion a year that Americans spend seeking relief from back pain. Included in that figure are products such as the three we saw just a moment ago. Over-the-counter, direct-to-consumer products account for almost $9 billion in sales for those seeking relief from back pain. As a former back pain sufferer, to me, what's important is, does a product work? We've got over 500 beta units in the field, many of which are being used by patients under active doctor's care, such as the images you see before you. This gentleman's pain management doctor contacted us after he suffered one failed back procedure and was scheduled for a second one. This one was to be a multi-level lumbar fusion. The image on the left is a 15 millimeter paracentral canal herniation, meaning that there was some impingement directly on the spinal column, which could eventually lead to paralysis if left untreated. The image on the right is the same patient after using our device for 10 weeks, 2 to 3 times a day at 20 to 30 minute therapy intervals. We fielded a great team that's got us to this point. 60 plus years in healthcare and medical practice, 5 startups, 3 successful exits, and perhaps more importantly, 6 spinal procedures. So we've assembled a group that is not only intimately acquainted with the problem that we're trying to solve, but also has the entrepreneurial wherewithal to see this company to success. In addition to a great team, over the last 24 months, we've maintained great traction and earned some very substantial fans. You may see an episode of Shark Tank. We were named a MedTech Innovator Top 20 company. We won one of the coveted J Labs Johnson & Johnson Innovation Awards. Texas Medical Center invited us to participate in the TMCX Accelerator program, where we emerged as the top company. At the Accelerate Michigan competition, VerteCore was the only company in their 10-year history to win both the grand prize as well as the People's Choice Award. And while completing the program at Texas Medical Center, telecom giant AT&T took notice of us. This latter is particularly important given the new COVID-19 realities. That's simply because from April to July of this year, there were 41 million telehealth insurance claims. It's a 4,000% increase over last year. In our collaboration with AT&T, we have developed and fielded the world's first and only fully connected mobile spine decompression device. It allows the doctors and patients to monitor their usage, and importantly, change the usage protocols on the fly if necessary. Our financial projections, we did not want to just rely on our intuition. We know we've got a fantastic product and we know it's a substantial market that we're entering. So we contracted with 2 US-based marketing firms and a third in Europe. And they told us that our numbers were not only accurate, but perhaps conservative. We project $20 million in sales first year, and between years 4 and 5, we anticipate $100 million in sales. Robust sales is somewhat meaningless without being able to retain profits in company, however. Our landed costs on our devices are just $120 for the consumer version and $350 for the AT&T connected version, allowing us to enjoy an 80% gross margin. And because we've maintained lean manufacturing and operating procedures, we're able to also bolster a 38% net profit retained within the company. And regarding cash flow, we have no debt load. We have no wild convertible notes. We have no outstanding warrants. We're a very lean operation. To summarize, we're already FDA Class 1 cleared. We have an additional Class 2 pipeline. And just 2 days ago, the FDA announced that devices given a breakthrough designation are also eligible for immediate CMS reimbursement approval. That's very significant because all devices that enjoy this breakthrough designation will immediately have reimbursement from not only CMS, but 75% of insurance companies out there. And I'm very proud to say that VerteCore and the VerteCore Lift have been designated as a breakthrough device. Again, we enjoy up to 80% gross margins. We're raising a $5 million Series A, which will allow us to be profitable in the first quarter of 2021. And to reiterate, we are prepared and ready to go to manufacturing and market now. VerteCore Technology, we provide decompression therapy to allow patients to be drug-free, surgery-free, and pain-free. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. There's a question in the chat box that says, from Mike Ryan, thanks for your service. You've been in business for 5 years, question mark. Do you have or need FDA approval from clinical trials?
No, we do not. The reason being is that we've already got FDA approval, Class 1, on our flagship and our second-gen devices. The FDA has also told us that they are willing to fast-track us for a Class 2 exempt status on our third-gen device as well.
There's another question in the chat box from Mike Ryan as well. What are your current sales and what is your sales channel plan to scale?
Yeah, so we're in a very unique position in that there's a really robust market of medical device distributors already well established. So we don't feel like we have to reinvent the wheel with an expensive in-house sales organization. Class 1 designation allows us to sell direct to consumer as well as through clinician channels. To answer the question regarding sales, we have not officially gone to market yet, but we've already got substantial pre-orders.
Brianna McDonald is asking, what is your exit strategy?
So interestingly enough, we've already been contacted by 3 of the top 10 companies within this space, one being Don Joy, another being Stryker, about the possibility of either a joint venture or licensing agreement or an exit once we commercialize. Ideally, we want to get the product on the market, sit in the hands of the consumer and those who need it most, but we feel a 36 to 48 month exit to one of the giants in the industry is quite possible.
Mark White is asking, are you manufacturing / assembling the device in-house or outsourced?
We are currently manufacturing on an outsourced basis, but our devices are designed in a modular fashion. Essentially, that lets us take advantage of both the economy of scale and certain manufacturing incentives by region, such as in Michigan, for example. Outsourcing the manufacture, final assembly, and quality control in-house.
Taylor Ferreira is asking, excellent product and presentation, Paul. 2 questions. One is, what is the projected cost to the consumer? And number 2 is the device sizable to accommodate obese or morbidly obese patients?
Yes, yeah, great questions, both of them. So the direct-to-consumer price MSRP is $799. That's priced in the mid to upper range of the consumer market. However, we've got much greater efficacy than anything else out there. And yes, the devices are sized with a lot of utility and an adjustment built in. The basic model will accommodate anyone from a 28-inch waist up to a 48-inch waist. And we do have extenders, and we have specialty models that will accommodate folks that are either below or above that range. The largest patient treated to date was about 480 pounds. The tallest was 6'8", and the smallest was 4'4" and less than 100 pounds.
Brianna McDonald is asking another question. How many of the competitors also have FDA approval?
Everyone within this space is required to at least have Class 1 FDA approval before they go to market. And of course, depending on what classification your device falls in, dictates what pre-market approvals the FDA is required to make. So we've got the designation which states that the device is the safest and offers the least chance of injury to the consumer.
Mark White is asking another question. Is there a recurring revenue component for remote patient monitoring?
Yes, great question. So we do anticipate that with our AT&T connected version. In addition to a subscription model for the devices, there is also a revenue stream component to the data, which we own. Again, you know, harsh realities of COVID aside, it's created a tremendous market opportunity for us, because of those 1.4 million Americans that were looking for spinal surgery this year, they were only able to complete about 200,000 of those before the hospitals and the healthcare system started canceling some of these procedures, because most of them are considered elective, although the patients wouldn't consider them as such.
Mentions direct-to-consumer sales are at risk of being reverse engineered, might be a better fit for a prescription model.
Right. So, we had looked at it from a number of different perspectives. Someone will always find a way to attempt to knock off your product. As they say, flattery is the highest compliment. But we've got a pretty robust patent portfolio. We're filed in over 50 countries. We're building a really robust vertical portfolio that we can defend against. And Butler Snow, as our lead counsel for our patents, we feel has done a really good job in putting up some defensible IP.
Paul Woodward asks, as a veteran, assume you are pursuing all avenues within government contracting revenue sources.
Yes, most definitely, and great point. So we're currently in talks with the DoD and the VA because they see a definitive need to get this within our veterans' healthcare system. We also have some military models that are in the final development stage now, which offer a lot more utility and bells and whistles than what you would see on the consumer side. So it's a very exciting market as well, with some substantial revenue potential.
Are there any other questions that people would like to ask out loud? John Son asks, are your employees veterans or are there veterans incentives?
Some of our employees are veterans. We do have veterans incentives, and I'm happy to discuss that, offline with anybody. It's near and dear to my heart to help out the veterans as well as those most in need in our society. So we do have somewhat of we have a component for more philanthropic cases and needs, which again, I'm happy to explore with anybody. The other thing I'll also add is there is a real need within our children's health community. So the doctors at Texas Children's contacted us because of the modular design of our devices, we feel and they feel that it can be utilized to treat idiopathic scoliosis. So that's something else that we're also exploring.
I have a question. Are you open to an M&A at this stage, if there's synergy?
Yes. So we actually were approached by some groups early on. We didn't see the strategic value or the synergy for our various institutions, but that is something that we would be open to. It's got to make sense for both sides beyond just a monetary consideration, though.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
There's another question. What is the pre-money valuation?
Pre-money, we're looking at $20 million. So for the $5 million, it would be a 25% equity allocation. And again, the only round that we raised previously was a small seed round. So we've been very diligent in not diluting the founders or those early angel investors. But we're at the point where we're ready to commercialize, and we're looking for the right strategic partner.
There's another question. Do you have a plan to market to military entities within the international space?
Yes. Yes, the caveat being that there may be certain constraints that we have to adhere to. The current model that we're exploring for the DoD and active forces for the U.S. would probably be relegated just to U.S. sales, but that could be open to U.S. allies as well. That's something we'd have to explore at the time.
There's another question here. What is the pre-money valuation?
Pre-money?
Yes, pre-money.
Yeah, we're looking at 20 million. Yeah, and again, we secured a assessment from a overseas firm that had evaluated approximately 4,000 other startups, including those specifically within our space. So it's not an arbitrary number, and we're happy to share those documents.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Great job.
All right, thank you so much.